And then we couldn't be here tonight, so we're continuing that hearing till April 14th at 7 o'clock. So now we're, I'm going to turn the meeting back over to Bill Ramsey. And congratulations, Bill, on the birth of your daughter, third child.
Thanks.
Do we have a name?
Abigail.
Abigail. Oh, not wonderful.
Thanks. All right, we do have I did receive a text message from a member who's going to be a little late tonight, but I do want to open the hearing up because I know we have a lot of people here. So let's start with the Recreation Department, Recreation Commission for Bradley Woods Playground. They're requesting waiver of site plan review in association with the building permit. So, Mr. Thorell, you're going to speak for the Rec Department. I would note, too, I think we're on television again tonight. Is that correct? So anybody in the audience, if you all know, we are going to be on television tonight. Anybody who's going to speak should approach, I guess, that microphone, and so people at home can hear. So, Mark, you're up.
Sure. Good evening. Mark Thorell, Recreation Director at Town of Hingham, here representing tonight the Recreation Commission, and we come before you tonight for a waiver of site plan review. And just in quick summary, this project started about a year and a half ago when the Bradley Woods Association came before the Rec Commission, and together we came up with the idea of submitting a project to the Community Preservation Commission to not only tear down an older playground located at Bradley Woods Association, but then to install a brand new playground. So we went through that process about a year and a half ago, and was awarded $50,000 from the CPC Commission to build a brand new playground. Along with the $50,000, the Bradley Woods Association has worked diligently over the last 6 to 9 months, raising funds on their own, and today have raised over $13,000 additional funds. They even created a playground committee, visited many playgrounds along the South Shore, and working with a couple different companies. This picture represents the outcome of the Bradley Woods Association subcommittee, what they put together on their wish list. And this picture, 95% of what you see is exactly what we're hoping to accomplish with our budget. There's a couple of pieces that would not be on here, but still, as we speak, the Bradley Woods Association is still trying to raise funds. So this is the goal, and there's just a couple of pieces that are not accomplished with what we have so far, which are these little small pieces right here, the shade canopy and one table. But the all the bigger play structures, we do have the budget for. And working with the town planning team, we met on site, showed where exactly we were thinking that we would like to install the playground. Very flat area. Talking with the conservation officer, she explained how we're supposed to excavate and get rid of the soil, so absolutely on board with that plan to spread the soil on site, very thin layer, and add grass seed to it and a shade mix to properly take care of the soil. There's two locations that we could use for putting the soil. Either one's fine for the Rec Commission, so as we go through this process, the Rec Commission, depending on this board's approval, would decide between those two locations, but according to the conservation officer, there are two good spots for it. The area here is 46 by 125. Hoping to install it about 25 to 30 feet to the right of the basketball court. I don't know if the board has any questions.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Having grown up on Holly Street, as Tom knows, I'm very familiar with the site. No vehicles can get back there, correct?
Correct.
Right, so you're not going to have an issue with parking at all?
Yeah, there currently is no parking.
Right.
It's really a neighborhood playground. There's no parking lot at all, so it's really kids from Bradley Woods, possibly the Shipyard, possibly Crow Point area. That's really foot traffic.
And one question I had for you, Mark, is, and I went back I went back a couple weeks ago to walk my dog back there to get a feel for it again. It's been a while. There was a metal wire that goes at the end of Holly Street that goes across. Who has responsibility for that wire? Because with that wire up, you can't get a car back there, obviously, and the hill is obviously very steep. It's not a big hill, but it's a very steep hill. Is that DPW or is that the association who owns that wire?
Department of Public Works.
That's DPW, okay,
Yeah.
all right. So I guess on Bradley Woods Day, they're the ones who open it up?
Yes, yeah.
Will that wire still remain up?
It depends. We're also working with the building commissioner on access to the site. So all the equipment and the surfacing is handicap accessible, but working with the building commissioner, we have to also make sure that the entire site is accessible. So that's an ongoing process, and we're working with him and the state to make sure. So it kind of depends on what the state and the building commissioner says is the best way to create access.
And when you say to the right of the basketball court, so the basketball court is adjacent to that, like kind of like a little bit of a hill with trees in it. So you mean when you first walk down into the playground, it's going to be right there as you walk in, correct?
You kind of go around the
Yeah,
corner
you go
there.
around the corner and you come into the open field.
Field, yeah,
It's going to be right there.
yeah.
That's a good spot.
Not at the exact spot where the current playground is. It would be at a different spot around the
Okay.
corner more.
I didn't know if you were going to take the other, is the other playground coming down?
It's gonna come
Yeah, it's
down,
another
yeah.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so it's not going to be up by the softball field. It's going to be closer to, I guess, 15 Holly Street, 17 Holly Street. I know there's a fence there. Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I had just a question of curiosity. On the left there, those little structures you said you're not going to build, what are those? They look like little gold stones.
Yeah, they're one of the smaller play structures on the design, and I'm assuming probably one of the least priorities, but just little climbing structures. They look like tree stumps, just for like play value for a 1 or 2 year old kind of crawling around, getting on top of tree stumps.
And what is the surface that's under the it looks like almost a cork or something, that, what's going to be there?
The surface would be engineered wood chips, which I'm told from the company are deemed handicap accessible.
Do those have to be changed
Yeah, that's part
periodically?
of the maintenance of a playground, is adding more wood chips in and making sure that there's enough in there.
And who oversees that? The playground committee?
The Recreation Commission.
The rec commission, okay. All right, those are my only questions. Thanks, Mark.
I don't have any questions. Looks great.
Thank you.
Anybody here from, any butters here, anybody from the association would like to speak? Go ahead. If you could just come up to the microphone and identify yourself.
I'll just identify myself that I live there, but I have nothing to say.
Okay, so no comment? Okay, all right. Anybody else would like to add any public comment? All right, I mean, have we received any correspondence with any butters that would be addressed? Site plan review at all?
We have not.
Okay, all right. Tom, go.
John Bellier, Recreation Commission. When we first discussed this, one of my, I would say I adamantly felt that I did not want visiting residential homes. So if there was any leeway that we had, and the other stipulation was leave room for a softball field. So if there were any other stipulations, I wasn't aware of it, and as it turned out, there's a place for it. So, but I didn't want that to happen. I just want to let you know.
Anyone else? All right, well, looking at our site plan review criteria, I just open it up to my colleagues here. I would be inclined to waive site plan review so long as there's a pre-construction meeting, between you, Mark, who's ever going to build this, and Mary, just to make sure everything's properly in order, and any concerns that would be raised by Mary would be addressed prior to the meeting. But let me hear from my colleagues. Thank you.
That seems fine to me.
Yeah, me too. I think that's a good idea.
Well, then I would entertain a motion that we waive a site plan review for Bradley Woods Playground, which is going to be located behind Holly Street, Bradley Woods. And I would make this motion. It's going to be in association with a building permit. Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I just want to say, having lived back there for many years, it's going to be a great addition. Bradley Woods is one of the most family-friendly areas we have in town, so it's going to be nice. I hope it works out well for you. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck. Next item on the agenda doesn't start till 7:30, and we do have, as I said earlier, we do have a colleague who's going to be here late, so maybe we can go to the old new business, and we can discuss the minutes of March 19th, 2014, and March 24th, 2014 at this time. Has everybody had a chance to review those minutes? Okay, 19th, all right, so then we'll just vote on, and I think, and we got, in the mail, we got the 19th only, correct? Okay, all right. So with that then, if there are no proposed changes, I would entertain a motion that we act favorably on the minutes of March 19, 2014.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. So we have before us all right, so you want to tell us about the
10-acre parcel, right in the front there, in those dotted lines. So they're taking this piece and making a parcel. So they're taking some land from 6B and I think it's A, but from 3 different parcels. It says right up in there, the purpose.
So the purpose of the plan is to create a new 10-acre parcel, Lot 12, which is a portion of lots B and C, LCC 8613A, and A portion of Lot 6 from LCC 32564C.
Did they say why?
No, I wasn't there when they dropped it off. I didn't know if you were there, so they left it on my desk.
I didn't even know about it, so if the board wants to table it until next meeting, we can get more information, unless you're comfortable.
No, I don't. I mean, I just was curious. It's like they're just separating out their business from the rest of the land. They might tie in
This is
Bristol Brothers.
registered land, right? So they had to get this approved at land court.
Correct.
Yeah, and this is abutting the Bristol Brothers property.
I mean, it appears that all of the requirements of an A&R are met. I think it's always good to know why they're doing it, but if all the requirements are met, I'm inclined to support it.
I agree.
All right. Now I would entertain a motion. We act favorably on approval not required for
Plymouth Quarries,
yes, Plymouth Quarries.
410 Waiting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Karen, any other preliminary issues you want to discuss before we get to our 7:30?
I wouldn't do anything.
I don't know.
need 3 votes for SPR. But we've got situations, sometimes you don't get it, I just, what I do is I kind of continue until we get the members. That happens sometimes.
As long as we're within our timeframe. Otherwise, you gotta stay. You gotta stay until you figure it out.
And well, maybe we could talk about the last item on the agenda, the feedback on public. On the SUV project. I think she would, yeah, but, okay, we'll hold off on she. All right, so we're just going to take about a 5-minute break until 7:30, but I know that we have some interested members of the public coming to that one, so I don't want to start before 7:30, and we're holding off for another board member as well, so let's take a quick break. 7:30, the next item on the agenda is a continuation of a hearing, the Back River Condominium Trust and Back River Land LLC are the petitioners. This is at 224 Beale Street. They're seeking site plan review in connection with a special permit A2 to modify details of the approved plan for the Back River Townhouse development. So what I'd like to do tonight is maybe hear from the applicant, if you want to update us with any changes since the last meeting, that'd be helpful. And then we'll get some questions from the board, we'll hear from our peer review engineer, and then we'll take some public comment, and we'll hopefully get through site plan tonight. Okay? So who wants to speak to the applicant? Mr. O'Brien or Counselor Gold? And again, anybody who wants to speak, I'm going to give everybody a chance to speak. Just come up to the microphone and identify your name and address, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Kablak. I'm here on behalf of Back River Land, LLC, the co-applicant for this modification. Tonight, on behalf of the trust, is Bruce Isidore, and he's here to speak about the application as well. The last hearing was a joint hearing before this board and the Zoning Board of Appeals. That was back in March. That hearing was continued and is now bifurcated into two different nights, this board tonight and Zoning Board next week. The request that's before you tonight has to deal with modifications to the original site plan and has to do with construction of a sidewalk and our request that that sidewalk be eliminated. It has to do with reduction of width of the internal roadways toward the back of the site from 24 feet to 20 feet and reduction of some curbing and the change of the emergency access apron back to Bear Cove Park from pavement to a landscaping surface. That's in essence the modification that's before this board. At the joint hearing, there was some question about the fire chief's inspection of the turning radius at the back of the site. You now have two letters in your file. I believe the most recent is March 25th, and he approved the turning radius on the most recent plans. The plans that are before you tonight reflect the turning radius that he wanted back there, and so that concern has been met. Also, there was some concern about elimination of the sidewalk and the proposed crosswalk that would have crossed Beale Street. And the Traffic Safety Committee has met since that last joint hearing, and it's my understanding, while I don't have formal minutes of that meeting, it's been reported back to me that the Traffic Committee, their opinion is consistent with my client and the trust's opinion about a crosswalk on that point on Beale Street not making sense. So consistent with our modification request and now the input from the Traffic Safety Committee about no crosswalk at that location of Beale Street, it seems to me that it's consistent that we eliminate that sidewalk. Remember, that sidewalk was planned to originate on Beale Street and wind through the back of, or midway through the back of the condominium project, and both the applicant and the unit owners have said that they don't want that sidewalk. Now, part of the reason why we don't want the sidewalk, or why the trustees don't want the sidewalk, is that it really is not a path that is either used or contemplated to be used for residents to get out to Beale Street or vice versa. The second is that we had made a presentation about some significant landscape plantings that were made along the perimeter of the property as you come in from Beale Street that would have to be replaced or removed if we put in the sidewalk as planned. There's simply not enough room to keep the mature trees that have grown up there over time and put the sidewalk in. And so for both of those reasons, the sidewalk and the curbing that would go with that sidewalk, it was our request that the plan be modified to eliminate both of those features. There is an additional change on the plan that is before you tonight, which came as a result of a recommendation from Emily Wentworth, and that was that if the sidewalk is eliminated from Beale Street back into the middle of the site, that there be some pathway for the residents to use to get to the park. And so what is proposed currently, that was not before the board when we had the joint hearing, was to install bluestone pavers to go from the internal roadway out to the gate to the park. And that would be the route that most residents would take if they wanted a shortcut into the park. That would be the route that they would take over those bluestone pavers. Aside from that change, there really have been no other changes to the plan except for those positive recommendations by both the Traffic Committee and the other thing that I want to mention is that I believe you you have your review engineer comments, and I think those comments were fairly favorable as well. That's the summary of our report and an update on where we are today. And I don't know, Mr. Isidore, if you want to make a statement on behalf of the trustees.
Well, before I let you go, there was a request that you meet with the Bear Cove Park Committee. Did you get a chance to do that?
There was a site walk that occurred last week. It was attended by Emily Wentworth. I don't know, Ms. Savage, if you were there in attendance.
No, Abby did attend. Abby Pearson.
Abby from the Conservation Commission. And I understand that the chairman of the Bear Cove Park Committee was there, as well as maybe 2 other members. They did do a walkthrough of the area in back of the site, in the area of the detention basin, and there is a proposal for some additional landscaping as part of that site walk. I can give you an update on that as well if you want.
Did we receive positive feedback from Bear Cove Park?
We did receive positive feedback on the site walk, and everybody that attended agreed to accept some work with staff to design the landscaping. Those discussed in back, and there is to be an updated landscaping plan. I don't have it yet, but it should come in before the zoning board meeting. And people were supportive of that effort.
Yeah, there is a proposal. We do have some additional plantings that we've proposed, both along the emergency access strip and rimming the detention basin. And I understand that the Bear Cove Park Committee will be meeting sometime between now and when we meet with the zoning board next, which is next Wednesday.
Well, so I guess, Mr. Taccio, you represent the association, so if you want to speak, we'll let you do that as well. I did want to note that before I recognize Mr. Taccio, the board did receive a correspondence from the residents, and I believe it was 25 signatures who indicated that they opposed the sidewalk. So we do have that, and I want to note that on the record. Okay. Mr. Taccio, you can come up if you'd like.
Abby Pearson was there. Abby Pearson wasn't there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, on behalf of the association, we've been speaking with Mr. Kablock, and they basically support all of the requests. I think the latest and the greatest on the petition is they're up to, I think, 48 names now. And that came up last time. The question was, did we poll everybody and just what the numbers were? And we didn't have those numbers. So we can actually submit the updated address list. But from what I understand, that basically that's everyone who we were able to get a hold of signed off on it. So I think that's a rather strong indication of support to have just everyone online. The one thing that we would ask, you remember last time Mr. Claypool mentioned the wear course going onto the road, and what we would ask is that when you issue your recommendation on the site plan review, that to preserve the final wear course, that actually be delayed or not be allowed to be installed until the framing, siding, and even, say, delivery of the sheetrock on buildings J and B are completed. And that just has to do with making sure that the wear course doesn't go down, and then to have the heavy trucks come in and basically chew that up. I submitted some language over to Mary later in the afternoon, so you'll have that available to the board as well. And then that's basically about it. And Mr. Chairman, if I think Bruce Isidore is also a resident, I think Bruce wanted to add something as well. Is that correct?
Well, you're a resident, so...
Well, I'm speaking on behalf of the trust.
Okay, so you're representing somebody?
The trustee.
Come on up.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay. No, I was going to let you speak with the other residents.
Okay.
Sure.
I just briefly want to talk about this sidewalk issue, since I have a fair amount of history with this project. I could probably go back, as Sarah goes back as far as I go, which I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we do go back a long way with respect to this. So I was here from the beginning until Tom got more competent counsel and Mark Kablock was involved with the project before I lived there. I remember the hearings, at least in a general way, in terms of the hearings that were before the Planning Board and before the Board of Appeals at that time, and obviously this project was even part of the part of the contention in terms of the decision of the Board of Appeals and the Planning Board deciding at that time, because they felt that some of the conditions that had taken place were not followed by the Planning Board and by the Board of Appeals, and had that happen on a number of occasions, was issues about changing the zoning to make, ultimately, which resulted in the Planning Board recommendations becoming binding on the Board of Appeals unless there's a process that goes back and forth. A lot of what was going on back at that time was the interest in Tom Hastings as the developer to really kind of keep I don't know how you would describe it, more of a countryish Nantucket style. That was without sidewalks on the roadways. There was requests then for a lot of parking areas, redoing of some of the locations of some of the housing. It's two dead-end streets. There's Osprey and Osprey Way and Heron Way, which there was discussion about having that being a loop road to not dead end. And a lot of that was a source of back and forth, as often happens with developments. At the end of the day, it was kept without the significant number of parking areas and without that being a loop road. I was surprised, actually, when I started to see the permits and the modifications that were requested here, to see that there was plans with a sidewalk on. And I've even had a discussion with Tom McGrath at some point. I think it's possible, maybe Sarah may have some recollection of this, it's possible that at one point probably the planning board was, and I don't really even have a specific recollection of this, but may have been looking for sidewalks to go down the entire project so that it would provide an access that was different from the access of going behind towards what was formerly the Hingham Mutual building and going down that way from the parking lot, that maybe there would have been an access from Beale Street down. Those sidewalks never made it on the plans. They were never agreed to. They were never part of the development plan. So I was surprised to see this sidewalk kind of show up. Attorney Koblock mentioned that it goes down to the midpoint of the site. I don't think it goes down to the midpoint of the site at all. Maybe it's a third of the site at best, but I was surprised to see that. Nevertheless, it's on there. Had that been a significant topic of conversation in terms of the necessity for a sidewalk, I think there would have been, and by the way, we had town council actively involved in this project all the way through, because this project was not just a special permit. It needed a development agreement, which I believe was certainly the first development agreement ever done with the town. I'm not sure there's been another one, with a number of rezoning changes and parcel swaps and so forth. So it was fairly extensive with Jim Toomey's firm at the time. And if, in fact, this sidewalk were going to be a significant aspect of this project, we would have been asked to grant an easement to allow the public to come down that roadway. We don't have anything in our permits and approvals that requires us, it's a private road, that requires the condominium association to grant, either Tom Hastings or the condo association, to grant an easement to anybody in the public. So technically there wouldn't even be anybody, if there was a reason for access, they really wouldn't have a legal right. Now, I don't know that anybody's going to be out there stopping anybody, but as just a point of reference, we never had those discussions back at the permitting time about granting this easement. So I was a little surprised to see it. I think that at this point, with the traffic committee making the determination that it did, I think it would be a safety issue now to be inviting people who really wouldn't even have the legal right to be on it, but inviting them to cross at a point they shouldn't cross. One other issue, I think, that at least was reflected, I was at the Board of Appeals Planning Board hearing, sitting in the audience, that was reflected at that time is kind of the idea that you put this landscaping in, and now all of a sudden they're coming in to ask that there be no sidewalk. I mean, first, the trust, okay, and the condominium association didn't put the landscaping in. This project, and I guess to Tom's credit, the fact that he's been able to hang in through a market that's probably been one of the worst markets we've ever gone through is credit to his staying power. But we now have the benefit to look at this project not at, do we need a sidewalk in 2006, 2007, but 2014, when it's really fully developed and has been mostly fully developed except for about 7 or 8 units for a while now. Okay, so we get to look back on this. I'm not sure how that came about. There were amendments to the development agreement. There was a field house that Tom wound up putting in. There were a lot of changes ultimately to plans, so I don't know exactly how we got to where we got to, but I don't think we need the sidewalk, but just as importantly, I don't think Tom went and did this landscaping, okay, and did what he did on the basis of, oh, let me go do this, and then at some point I can come in and go, hey, I don't want a sidewalk because I got trees. I don't think, I've known him for a long time, I don't think that would be his modus operandi. He came in here a number of times for modifications to the permits, walkout basements, other modifications, doing buildings in certain kinds of time sequences. If in fact, okay, he wanted to get an amendment because he didn't want to put a sidewalk in and was actually on top of the fact that the sidewalk was there, he would have asked for it. The sidewalk would have either been designed or would have asked for a modification. I think it's kind of like the lost child here. I'm surprised to see it. I think he was as well on this in terms of coming in now. I don't think it serves its purpose to be pulling up the trees and doing a lot of the other work that would need to be done to try and fit this sidewalk in. So, on behalf of the condominium association and the residents, I was at a meeting of residents where this issue was discussed. There was no one who spoke in opposition to this at that meeting. And I think there's 48 signatures there. There will be 49, but one of the residents signed completely over my name. I had to look very hard, but if you look on item number 4, you might see my signature underneath, so it's really 49. And unless there's any questions, that's...
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, at this point in the hearing, I'm going to open it up to the board for any questions.
I took a walk, on private property, I guess, but with an understanding that that was okay down there, and walked along the proposed sidewalk, and it certainly did seem like a sidewalk to nowhere, as well as in a location that it wasn't necessarily needed in. And so I do wonder if you're right, Bruce, that it was left over from the planning board suggestions at some point. I don't know, but it does seem to just kind of end there at the gate, and doesn't seem to serve a purpose, and I would hate to see those trees go. On this plan right here, is this A1 the stones that you talked about, the paving stones that you're going to put now to allow people to go into Bear Cove, into the fields?
Yes.
Yep.
This is the pavers proposed here to come off of the park gate entrance up to Back River Road.
Okay. I don't really have any questions on the sidewalk at this point, other than what I just said, or on the presentation.
I would assume, too, that the trees provide the residents with some cover from the lights in the field, too. Would that be accurate? Yes, I guess everybody in the audience take an idea. And if they were removed, it could cause problems.
Well, there is a landscape plan that shows trees along there that would block, to provide the same cover. I think we saw that at the last hearing, right? That the landscape plan has trees along there.
Has trees along the other side.
Yeah. I have a question about school kids. I drove by there, I drive by there every day. And this morning saw a bunch of kids at the end of what's it called? Beals Cove Village driveway. Standing on the sidewalk waiting for, it's the next driveway up on Beale Street. Standing at the end of their driveway to their development on the sidewalk waiting for the school bus. And the sidewalk is funny because it stops. It doesn't even go all the way to the road. It just kind of stops, and there's a grassy area, and that's where all the kids were kind of standing on, the moms, the kids all around that area. So I turned right in there to see, so where'd the sidewalk go? Because it didn't have a sidewalk going across Beale Street, so I drove in, and it's a very similar driveway to this one. It goes in a little while, and then it kind of veers off to the right, and the sidewalk continues, and then all of a sudden the sidewalk stops. And there's a lot of parking lots that I presume these kids, they probably cross there and all that. But at the entrance, where there's a lot of coming and going of cars and high speed, I presume at some points with cars turning in or trying to get out, there is a sidewalk there, and it doesn't go anywhere. But I saw a lot of people using it, and this road, when I drove in here, and I see how it's been built, and there doesn't seem like a logical place for a sidewalk. But if I lived beyond that big curve in the road right there, and I had a kid who was walking up to Beale Street to go pick up the school bus, I wouldn't want them walking in the middle of the road, because you can't see around that curve when you're driving. So I understand how there could be 48 people signing this, because I see where, like, I as an adult would walk in the road, or I'd get in my car. But it's not the model for pedestrian safety that we see anywhere else in town. And if I had a little kid, I wouldn't want them walking in the middle of the street. And then I thought, well, you could go, like you have the nice blue lines that show going through the parking lot out to Beale Street, but I know that that parking lot is not plowed in the winter, for the most part. Maybe they get to it at the end of all their routes, but it's not typically plowed.
I hear what you're saying, but I think I agree with Sarah. It doesn't seem like there serves any useful purpose for the sidewalk, and removing the trees, I think, would be contrary to what we want to achieve. And I think what Bruce says about there's no easement rights, nobody would necessarily have the right to use it who's not an owner in the property. It strikes me that there's really no need for this sidewalk. Are there children who meet there for the bus to be picked up, or do they walk down from the...
I don't know if kids live there now at all. I'm just saying, it's like on all the developments along Beale Street, the bus picks them up at the end. They don't go into the developments. They pick them up at the end of their driveway at the street.
Yeah.
All of them. So, anyway.
All right, what I'll do at this point, we do have our peer review engineers and talk a little about drainage, so I'll recognize Tim and open it up for questions from the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pat Brennan with Amory Engineers. Mary had asked me to look at a couple of different plans. One was that modification plan that has been discussed already tonight, and the other was an existing building location plan which showed as-built building and driveway locations versus the approved plan. When I look at the existing building location plan, the as-built roadways are pretty much right in line with where they were proposed. The building footprint and driveway locations on most of the buildings differ somewhat from the approved plan, but in the overall scheme of things, it appears that the impervious area as built is essentially what it was on the proposed plan. So those modifications to the building footprints and the driveways, I don't see them as having any type of an adverse impact on the drainage system. Same thing with some of the requested relief that they're looking for in terms of to go back to the last 150 feet or whatever of Back River Road, where they're looking to reduce the width of the pavement from 24 feet to 20 feet. There's those other two roads, the branch roads off of Back River Road, Heron Way and Osprey Way. Both of those are 20 feet. One of them serves 13 units, the other one serves 5. This little section of Back River Road will only serve 3 units. So having it at 20 feet, knowing that the fire department was okay with it, I don't see that as being an issue, and I actually see it as being a good thing. You're reducing the impervious area a little bit. And then they're showing an 18-foot extension of that road. Well, that 18 feet of pavement is pretty much offset by reducing the width of to the 20 feet. Similarly, by eliminating the pavement that goes out to Bear Cove, and replacing that with what the fire department recommended, a grass paved type system, which it's a pervious system, but it supports the weight of the fire and emergency vehicles. I see that as a good thing as well. And then on the other, I actually put together that aerial photo with from sitting in the meeting last time, that was my understanding of what the residents were saying, what they were using for access. So I thought that might clear it up a little bit, because in that photo you see not only where the proposed crosswalk and sidewalk were supposed to go, but also where the existing sidewalks are down, or crosswalks are down at the signalized intersection. About 285 feet between the proposed crosswalk and the existing sidewalk, the existing crosswalk down the road there. The sidewalk issue, I really didn't give an opinion one way or the other, because that's really a board decision. It's really not an engineering decision. But the slope granite curbing, the only reason why that was put in is to create a physical barrier between vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic if the sidewalk were there. Without the sidewalk there, Cape Cod berm will serve a good enough purpose. You don't really need, Cape Cod berm does not provide a physical barrier between a sidewalk and a roadway, whereas the slope granite does. And that's the reason why the slope granite was put in there originally. And from a drainage standpoint, I don't think any of the modifications have a negative impact on the drainage system, so I don't see that as an issue. That's pretty much it. Answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions?
I have a question. So does that mean, so right now there's slope granite curbing?
They didn't, it was my understanding that they haven't put that in, correct?
Okay. So you're saying it would have been necessary had the sidewalk been there, but if the sidewalk is not there, that's not necessary and the Cape Cod berm is okay?
Correct. Ideally, I'd actually prefer vertical granite curbing because it's even a better barrier. A car can still drive up slope granite curbing, but it's more of a hindrance than Cape Cod berm is.
Why the extra paving there at the end of, why do they need that extra, what did you say, 20 feet?
There's parking, extra parking. Yeah, I wasn't sure why they put it in, but I guess it's for extra.
And that goes into Bear Cove Park, or it's still on your property?
That's all on the backwards condominium property, and it's paving, extra paving for, I think, 2 extra spaces for visitors. We thought that since we were reducing pavement width leading up to that and also making the conversion for landscape pavers in the back, that we were on the positive side of the impervious surface, and we could provide a little extra parking back there.
And can you tell me where that is on this plan right here?
Where D is.
D, okay. Now, was this C, the C that's this grass, that's what the fire department has recommended?
Correct.
Was that part of the original plan? That roadway?
That was to be paved.
It would have been paved.
Okay, and the fire department has recommended that that be a grass?
Grass-free.
Okay. I think those are my questions. Thanks, Pat.
Any other questions from the board for the peer review engineer? No. Okay, I know that we have a lot of folks in the audience here, so why don't we take the questions from the audience? Mr. Hertzman.
Good evening. My name is John Hersey. Judy Sneath hit the nail right in the head. She's absolutely correct here. Those sidewalks were in the development plan to begin with, and they should be put in today. Going down the line, who takes responsibility when this is really built up and there's children living in there and they come out like she's addressed on Beals Cove and they have to stand for the bus? Where do they stand? And when cars are going by, speeding by there, and they do, there's been speed traps there, and somebody wants to turn in from after they go down, stop and shop, turn in there, and there's no sidewalks, and the kid gets whacked, injured or killed. Who is the liability source here? Where does the family pick up the money to pay for the kid you just killed? You're making a bad decision here. It was developed that way, and that's the way it should go. I'm a tree lover in town, that's documented. Take the trees, remove the trees, they can be removed, okay, and put the sidewalk in like it was supposed to be. Okay, now, with that aside, you're talking about the back of the property now, on the so-called dagger parcel. I'm going to ask the same question I asked the 19th of March, when I asked the question of the joint meeting. Did you people read the paperwork that came from the Department of Interior December 3rd of 2013? I asked that question. Did you people read that letter? It's 13 pages long. The Department of Interior has serious questions regarding the dagger parcel. And I'm going to read something to you right here.
Well, the only thing, and I appreciate you raising that issue, it's an important one, but I think, as was stated at the last meeting, that specific issue is outside the scope of this board.
Okay.
And it's being, but it could be a really important issue, but tonight it isn't as relevant.
Okay, I'm not going to read that. I'm not going to leave that.
Oh, okay.
You people should have already had that. Okay, that's a mistake on Ted Lexiadis for not giving it to people. Okay, stop. Now, I want to read the declarations of restrictions on the dagger parcel. And then we'll talk about the dagger parcel. The property shall not be sold, leased, assigned, or otherwise disposed of, except under the eligible, except for another eligible government agency that the Secretary of the Interior agrees in writing and assure the conform use and maintain of the property for parking public and recreation purposes, subject to the terms of the conditions of the original instrument conveyance. However, nothing in this provision shall preclude the grantor for providing replaced recreation facilities and services responsibility, the approved specifications through the concession agreement entered into within. Now that means nothing can be done on this parcel unless the Department of Interior agrees with it. And this is park and recreation. This is a perpetuity. That's all this property is supposed to be used for. Not for an easement agreement, okay? Not to put somebody else's property on park and recreation property. This is illegal. This is wrong. Okay? Now this is the dagger parcel right here.
Is the roadway going into the dagger parcel?
Yes, it is.
That one that the
Yes,
C?
The line is right there. The line is right there. Let me show you. This is his property right here. This is his line right here. This goes in the...
So that dotted line. Okay, thank you.
That's a serious problem. Now, I'm willing to leave this with you if you want to take a look at this. This is the dagger parcel.
Sure, you can leave it.
Okay. But I want to read something before I leave it here.
Okay.
Give me the time to read this on the dagger parcel.
I'm giving you the time.
No, I'm just saying, don't turn it down, please. The area in the red, the area in the red, the area in the red here. The area in red was misappropriated, stolen by the developer for a large retention basin to serve his needs. It was never part of any swap agreement. Easements are prohibited on parcel C. Dagger parcel. By the deeds of the 206 in 1973-72, intrusions into either parcel are illegal, and the town has no authority to violate the deeds. It's right here. This is illegal if you allow that to be done. Now, I said my piece, you people do whatever you want to do. You have to answer to a higher authority. That's the Department of Interior. I rest my case. If you want to see this, and you want to see both of these, you'll want to.
If you want to leave with us,
Okay, but I'm going to ask Karen and
you to get
Tom,
back?
Tom, I want these back.
I'll give them back at the end of the meeting if you'd like.
That's fine. I want you to look at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. All right. Anybody else in the public like to add anything? Well, let me see if anybody else wants to speak first, Bruce. Thank you. Anybody else from the general public like to add a comment? Come on, sir. Yeah, come on up.
Robbins is my name. I live on Perry Road.
So if you can come up to the mic and just, sorry, if you can come up to the mic and just.
I want to comment on this little piece right there. I am wondering whether that intrudes on Bear Cove property's land.
This is the property line, right?
Yes. Oh, it is?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So the walkway I just pointed to is shown being entirely on this developer's parcel, ending at the property line. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Thank you for the question. Thank you. Anybody else in the back of the room? Go ahead.
If we have time, I'll go and try and see if I can look into my computer and look in the files. That dagger piece, my recollection is, we did a land swap. That was Project Turnabout's piece. We deeded that piece to the town. That wasn't part of Bear Cove Park. We deeded that to the town and then took an easement back for drainage purposes. That was Lot C, if it's my recollection, in an ABC land swap. The original entrance for Project Turnabout came all the way around the fields when Judy was talking about coming down and making a right before you would get to the fields at all after you came down Beale Street. That was the entrance to Project Turnabout behind the backstops. came all the way around the turn and came into the project. We got rid of that and part of the land swap to give that back. They gave us part of the parking area that was way out to the side towards Beal's, towards Beal Cove condominium, so that we wound up having the driveway, which is Back River Road. They wound up getting the land and redoing. Tom redid all the fields as part of the development agreement. Okay, so those fields were all redone. That C parcel in the back there was part of Project Turnabout. I'm almost positive. I can go look it up. Okay,
I mean, I think you're correct, but I think it is now part of Bear Cove Park. So when you say deeded to the town, it's part of now Bear Cove Park.
I agree, but what we're reading is the restrictions from the original grant in I did read that letter because I was involved in this land swap with town council. I don't think there's any violations, but that letter from 2013 that's being read from about the restrictions on the park, on the property that was deeded to the town of Hingham from the United States government, this Lot C is not part of that. It's now owned by the town, okay, but it's not subject to the restrictions that were being read in that letter of 2013 about violations.
But it certainly raises a red flag that part of the roadway is in the town of Hingham's land in the dagger that it was part of the trade for this whole zoning change, and it does concern me. There should not be any of that roadway in the dagger. I mean, that's just, I pretty strongly feel that way.
Yeah, I'll let Mary speak to that in terms of the property lines, but because I don't have the exact lines here. I'm just trying to respond to John's comments about what was going on with terms of the restrictions on the parcels, because that was part of Project Turnabout's land that became Spectrum as part of the purchase.
Can I comment, please?
Wait 1 second.
Okay.
You want to speak to the property lines, Mary? Or?
This section C is the emergency access, originally approved to be paved, and then the Conservation Commission order of conditions suggested a more pervious pavement treatment. And so this is simply emergency access. It's not a public roadway per se. It's next to the detention basin, and that's why the fire department weighed in and said that they would still be able to get their trucks back there if it was one of those grasscrete pavers that...
But why is some of it in the dagger, which is the town of Hingham's land?
That was part of the original agreement with the land swap. That's an emergency access. That goes back to the original agreement. Did you want to add something?
Yes. To that point, I just want to make it clear that the modification is not to propose a new emergency access road.
Correct.
The modification request is to take an emergency access road that was approved previously as a paved road and convert it from a paved road to pavers, these landscape pavers. So it's not a new access, it's just converting from blacktop to grass pavers.
As required by the Conservation Commission in the order of conditions.
No, I mean, I prefer that. I just wish it weren't in the dagger. I mean, there's so much of sort of changing things, and I really don't like dealing with issues that have been changed, layout of roadways, layout of buildings, reducing of pavement of roadway, not putting in sidewalks. I hate to do it after the fact. The sidewalk can be put in after the fact, but we can't, I mean, it's hard to move buildings, and I think it concerns me that this is how we're dealing with this project. It's after the fact. We're not asking to change the width of the pavement before the fact. We're not asking to change the layout of the buildings before the fact. We're being asked to deal with it after the fact. And after the fact is really never a good way to do things. Never.
Mr. Clark?
Excuse me, Jim Clark. As to that piece of paper that John had, or something that showed you the dagger parcel, I think this first 100 feet was not part of Project Turnabout. This first 100 feet, the 75 feet encroaching here, because that's the other plan we looked at. And we were looking at it to see if we could find the graveyard, and I don't know whether we should be digging in there until somebody finds where the graveyard actually is or isn't. Some of them may be there. Some of them could be anywhere. But I wouldn't dig any further until I found out. Would you?
All right, thank you. All right, at this point here, I think we're going to deliberate.
Excuse me, Billy. 1 second. I'm almost done. The piece of paper that you have there, the plan you just had?
Yes, sure.
That one right there.
you want to look at?
No,
reference?
I've seen it, I'm looking at it here, but the line shows you a different line here. And that was part of Hingham's property. That was never part of the swamp.
So you're saying that's not part of the dagger, that's part of the
Well,
original
I'm not saying
Bear
it,
Cove?
it's a fact. I don't know.
I would say I agree that we're here to talk about the pavers, and if there is a issue with the legal kind of use of that land, that is better dealt with in a different hearing, because we're just
Zoning board.
modifying something that already happened.
I do note that Real Estate Council is engaged in this issue, and I know she's dealing with it with the Board of Selectmen, so I would agree with Judy that that's their purview. But I thank you for the comments. Okay. All right. At this point, we're going to go to site plan review.
Excuse me, are you going to need time to respond?
Well, you already spoke.
Yeah, but something else was mentioned. Can I respond?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate this, okay? What Mr. Isidore responded to was the agreement of the easement. Okay, the easement was not issued on this property when Mr. Hastings had Project Turnabout. This here was done after the fact when he did the land swap, then the town gave him the easement on the property. Okay, so that wasn't done before. Look at the records, look at the deeds, you'll see that, okay? Now, as far as going into the dagger parcel with these pavers, okay, who's benefiting by this? Who is benefiting by it? The developer's benefiting by this. The developer should not be putting his stuff on our property. That's the bottom line, okay? Every other property you look at, it's all done with asphalt, okay? And that's the way it should be, okay? Going down the line, I'm telling you right now, there's going to be a problem with the issue. So you can solve it now by not letting them do it, let them asphalt it, and let it go. It's going to develop, the developer is going to gain by this, the people living there are going to gain by this. What are we getting out of it? Okay, they're violating the land, it's not supposed to be done that way. I rest my case, thank you.
Thank you. And we'll give you your notes back too, sir. Thank you.
You don't want to go through these?
I know you wanted it back, so I want to make sure.
I know, but I want everybody to see this.
I gave people a
I
chance
hope
to
you're
look
going
at
to vote the right way.
it. Thank you. Okay. All right, at this point here, we're going to close public comment. We'll go to site plan review. What I would propose, we go through the criteria of site plan review on page 9. We'll go line item by line item. If anybody wants to propose conditions, we can do it at this time. We also want to address, I guess, specifically the sidewalk issue, the preserving the final wear course issue as well has been requested. Anything else we need to address specifically?
The plan that was submitted today has an updated modification list, so there's also a request for that new 65-foot bluestone connection, so deliberation on that should be part of any motion.
So are we doing site plan review again because we never did it to begin with, or because it was ignored to begin with?
You're doing a site plan because it's part of a special permit A2. If there's sections of this site plan the board feels do not apply, you could choose to
But it's
waive
not a
them.
modification.
Well, it came in
It's a site
before
plan.
binding site plan, so technically.
Right, so it's an
in a
original
way,
site
it's a new
plan.
one for you.
Well, we did site plan before, they just wasn't.
Right, it
It wasn't binding.
considered, yeah.
It was binding. Okay. All right, so on page, if people want to look along, it's on page 9 of our bylaw. So under criteria A, planning board shall consider the following: protection of abutting properties against detrimental usage by provision for surface water drainage, fire hydrant locations, sound and site buffers, and preservation of views, light and air, and protection of abutting properties from negative impacts from artificial outdoor site lighting. So we did hear from our peer review engineer that drainage is not an issue. We got positive feedback from the fire department. Anybody else look at anything else? No? Okay. To criteria B, convenience and safety of vehicular and pedestrian movement within the site and on adjacent streets, the location of driveway openings in relation to traffic or to adjacent streets, taking account of grades, site distances, and distances between such driveway entrances and exits, and the nearest existing street or highway intersections. Sufficiency of access for service, utility, and emergency vehicles.
Is this where I tell you that I don't think that the safety of pedestrian access is safeguarded by the removal of a sidewalk that was in the plan?
I think that would be the time to raise it, yeah.
Judy, the sidewalk on at Beals Cove that you talked about, does that go to a crosswalk crossing Beal?
No.
So it's just like this, it goes to sort of the corner of the...
It helps people traverse that busy part of the driveway and that no visibility around the curve.
I mean, I have to say that I did not think about the bus.
I think my feeling on it is that if I lived back there, I would want a sidewalk, but we do have almost 49 signatures of residents who live back there who've asked us, excuse me, who've asked the board not to impose that condition. And the traffic committee did vote against putting the crosswalk there. So that, I wouldn't require that condition personally, but what does everybody else think?
Yeah, I agree with Bill. And I don't think it has any real great safety value.
I think it's a mistake when there's snow piled up on both sides of that roadway and you're in the back and you want to walk out to the front and you come around that curve. I don't think it's, I mean, it's just not safe. If we put in somebody put that sidewalk there because it's safer. So we're making the condition less safe because he already planted trees that he put in the wrong place, because the landscape plan had trees in it, it had a sidewalk in it, it was all there. The builder decided to do whatever he wanted to do there instead, and now we're going to take out the sidewalk, which we wouldn't do. We would put sidewalks in if we were permitting this new. So, anyway,
I mean, you're correct on that, and you're correct that, I mean, it is true that the planning board recommended full sidewalks on this property. And that was before binding site plan, and the zoning board chose not to do anything about that. So, I mean, Judy's arguments have worked for me.
So, folks in the audience, we've already given the opportunity for public comment. Now we're in deliberation, so public comment stops once we start deliberating. Give everybody a chance to speak. All right, so now it looks like we have, on that condition, it looks like the board is split 2-2. So I think with that specific condition, we have to wait until our fifth member can vote on it, or procedurally, what do you think?
Procedurally, the board's extension expires tonight, so you need to act this evening. And another portion of this section after the sidewalk is alleviating the crosswalk requirement. But the board needs to discuss specifically the matter at hand and determine if you can reach agreement or condition something.
Due to the fact that the traffic committee recommended no crosswalk, I think we can't really we generally go with the traffic committee recommendation, so.
So that addresses the crosswalk.
That addresses the crosswalk.
With respect to the sidewalk, where we have a split board, and the permit expires tonight, I guess two things could happen. One thing would be that the applicant could request an additional extension for a week to address this when our fifth member is here, or you need 3 votes. As council knows, you need 3 votes for a site plan review, approval, and/or a condition, and without a third vote, I guess the motion would fail, which would mean the crosswalk would remain.
Well, site plan is either approved or approved with conditions.
Right.
So the site plan wouldn't fail, the board would need to find a condition or make a finding that the board could agree upon.
But let's go with say there's no extension.
The board must act tonight. And so now, if the board chooses...
Does our site plan start with the old permit, or...
If you choose not to approve the removal of that sidewalk, the developer will be bound to build it as previously approved.
I agree. That's
Well, what if we just don't vote on it?
Procedurally.
Then if we don't vote on it, it lapses. It automatically sticks to the developer requirement to build the sidewalk.
You should,
That's what would
the
happen.
board should vote.
Mr. Chair,
Sure.
what's this procedural issue?
My request on behalf of the applicant, and I would defer to Tachio on behalf of his client, because remember, it is a joint application. My suggestion would be that we would continue this discussion to your next available meeting, where we would hopefully have a full constituted board, because as we have always said, we wanted to make these modifications kind of all or none, and I don't want to start picking and choosing among the different modifications. Sure.
You guys want to, it's kind of a statement. Why don't you go speak outside? Why don't we do this? Because it's an important issue for you folks, so why don't you speak outside and we'll reconvene in about 5 minutes. Okay.
That'd be fine. I just say, it's
Well,
under one issue, just
no,
it's not a substantive issue.
Well, let the two councils speak that represent the applicants, and then we'll reconvene. Wait till everybody gets back in the room. High drama here.
And take care of the kids, yeah.
All right, so I'm going to call the meeting back to order, and I just want to let folks in the audience know what's going on. So when we go through site plan reviews, your requirement is 3 votes for a condition. If the votes aren't there, then another legal issue arises. So you have very competent, both parties, both co-applicants have very competent, very experienced legal counsel. So I'm going to defer to them about what they want to do tonight.
Yes, so Mr. Chairman, I would like to address this procedural question, and we would, after conferring, like to continue until your next meeting. It is important to try to resolve this before we go into the zoning board next, which is next Wednesday.
So we'll do it next Monday.
And if we can get on your agenda for Monday, that would be great.
I think, are we going to be here next Monday? All right, so what I'm going to need, Ms. Tatchi, do you concur?
Yes.
All right, so what I'll need from both you gentlemen is I'll need we can do a written request for extension tonight. You can make the extension request to next Monday night, and I'll prioritize it. What I'm going to do, everybody know, what I'm going to do next Monday night is we're going to go right into site plan review. All right, so we're going to continue our conversation. So I know some folks in the audience wanted to add something as we started it, but once we start deliberations, the time for public comment is over. However, if you would like to submit a letter, we will consider it. So folks who have their hands up, please feel free to write the board, and we'll consider it. It'll be taken and added to the record. We'll all read that information. I'll note it at the beginning of the meeting. But the next meeting, we're going to go right into site plan review so we can close the matter out and get everybody a decision either way. Okay? Would like to add anything in closing?
No, thank you very much.
Gotcha. All right, then I'm going to adjourn this matter until next Monday night. We'll try to get on the meeting at 7 o'clock for site plan review. And I appreciate everybody's input, everybody coming. Thank you, sir. All right, the next item on the agenda this evening deals with review of proposed SCB Hingham LLC plan changes. We have a I'm going to give it room a minute to clear.
I got 5 copies of this email. Oh, this traffic committee.
Yeah, I was at...
But I got to put on the mail. Yes, you go. Did you read all of them?
I read all 5. Well, I guess this
I was,
is Gary.
so that we know, I was at the meeting, so I took notes at the planning board. The vote was 4-1. I was the one opposed.
Yeah.
The reasons for the denial of the waiver. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is, as I noted, is a request for review of proposed SCB Hingham LLC plan changes. The planning board has been requested by the ZBA to provide feedback on public safety and the potential detrimental impact to the community with respect to this development. So I got further clarification on this issue from both Emily and Susan. Emily indicated that the ZBA was looking for information that we could provide on public safety and the potential detrimental impacts. And then Susan went a bit further, and she gave me good counsel as always, and she asked that we would basically give back site plan review criteria. And I think what I was going to ask Mary to do is we give her some feedback, and if she could prepare a formal memo from the board, at least from the 3 of us tonight, and send it over to the ZBA and go from there. Okay? So why don't we just go through the site plan criteria, and then we'll be sure to address those 2 specific issues if we're unable to do so.
Well, we were going to go through site plan review criteria based on the new plans,
Yes, yeah.
which I did not bring.
You can look at mine.
They're the ones, same ones we got last time. But maybe we can all share.
Bill, you can. And we also, Karen provided you with also a table to illustrate that the revised plan goes back to 20 units, 16 market, 4 proposed affordable units.
Say that again.
This would be a 20-unit building, 16 market rate, 4 affordable, and it's showing 2 residential floors and then a garage/lobby level. So it looks like there would be a three-story building.
As an initial comment, I would note that I don't believe it to be in keeping with the neighborhood. It's an awfully large building.
In massing.
And
Just trying to use Gary's words.
We don't have a resident architect here, right? So it's an awfully large proposal. It's also in terms of width and height, and I don't find it to be in keeping with
The architecture here, yeah.
right up there. So that's my initial comment. My second comment would be that I am concerned that this proposal would increase traffic flow, vehicular and pedestrian movement in and around the area. And I am, as an initial comment, I'm not satisfied that the safety issues are addressed, and the increase in traffic flow could cause significant problems to the abutters as well as the potential residents of the proposal.
Is the roadway coming in the same place, Mary, as it was before?
It appears that it is, this is all the information that we have.
Did they have sufficient sight distances?
There were concerns about the adequacy of the sight line. There were some trees that needed to come down and some grading within the right-of-way, which requires a waiver. There is a list of waivers.
All right, so I think that's the sight distance and sight safety of the entrance.
Oh, here we go, the waivers right here. The waivers on the last page, if Sarah can.
Okay. This says it's 3.5 stories.
It's showing a partial basement, so it's probably walkout in the back because there's some grading at the back of the site.
This is more than 10.5 feet higher and 1 floor higher than is allowed by zoning.
So the applicant says that the peaked roof is consistent with surrounding architecture.
But I think the height would be detrimental.
The height is
Yeah, I think the
detrimental,
height is detrimental.
and the massing is not consistent with the surrounding architecture.
Under site plan criteria F, does talk about the adverse impacts of the town's resources. So obviously, a development of this size could potentially add some detrimental impacts to potentially the water supply, energy and public works. It would be a smaller one, but there also could potentially be a de minimis impact on the public safety resources for police and fire at times.
And it's in my head that there are wells in this area. So, water.
Do they have a letter from Aquarium? No.
Not that I'm aware of, however, I'm not managing the entire file, so.
Right. So we'd be concerned about the impact on the water.
And on individual homeowners' wells.
What's the proposed landscaping plan? Is it
I didn't see a revised landscaping plan with this material.
I don't see one here, Bill.
It doesn't really show an elevation from the street.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Because there is that hill as you go in.
So you might only see the peak of the you don't know.
And I don't believe that there's a crosswalk. Wouldn't that be a mid-block crosswalk there?
So a crosswalk would add to pedestrian movement within the site and adjacent site, so without a proposed crosswalk, that would also create a safety hazard.
Do they have a sidewalk?
Not on that side. There's a sidewalk on the other side of the street where the children walk to school.
Is there a sidewalk on their development?
not as shown there.
That would be,
Yeah, because it seems like it's close enough to South School that there would be a desire to walk to school from there, and yet the site doesn't have sidewalks on it that we can tell. And there doesn't seem to be a proposed crosswalk from what we can tell. There doesn't seem to be a proposed crosswalk. And they're not showing sidewalks. I mean, they're not showing sidewalks.
Sarah mentioned site distances, correct?
And you mentioned that you didn't see a landscaping plan, so
Right, so
that makes it.
comment really on that.
and it looks like they have the building 20 feet from the property line.
So there's proposed 20 units and 47 spaces.
It's hard to tell whether it's 11 feet or 20 feet from the property line, because there's some weird line there. You see that? There's a line here. I don't know what that, oh, it's a post and rail, so.
Oh, here you can see the elevation to
20
Main
feet from the
Street.
property line.
On third to last page, you can see they gave, it's kind of a 1 inch by 3 inch elevation. So I think that in the one where it's a detrimental to the neighbors, I think that having a 45-foot structure 20 feet from the property line is, would appear to be detrimental to the neighbors, but I don't know if that.
Above them.
Yeah, above them, right, so that could have problems.
That close to the property line, it would be difficult to do substantial buffering landscaping in that 20 feet, because you need to get around.
Elevated, and so as far as the request to add an additional, that would be addressing the request to add an additional 10 feet beyond the zoning allowance for the 35.
Yeah, they have a post and rail fence. I mean, that's certainly not adequate buffer from the neighbor 20 feet away. That's the only thing I see proposed. And that's at 11 feet away from their property. No, 11 feet from the abutting property line.
Did we fail to talk about any other area, Mary?
I'm just quickly
Looks like we hit everything.
looking at your site plan criteria. And I don't know that we have feedback from the public safety, the fire department about turning radius. I know with the previous plan, the pavement width was proposed to be narrower and there was no sidewalks. I haven't heard that specificity here, so we can't really comment on that. Public
right.
safety would need to comment on that. But you do have I, and you did speak to that already, minimizing unreasonable departure from character and scale of buildings in the vicinity. So I see under their list of additional waivers, for example, that they want a waiver to allow for the street opening prior to 2017. Is that something that the selectmen have granted for a development in the past? Because I know, like on Sharp Street right now, without going into detail about that project, but one of the concerns of the developer there is that they not bump up against the dig moratorium, you know, the opening of the street, because I know that's going to happen soon. So is this something that waivers have been given for, do you know? I think that one was given in the past, prior to my tenure here. My understanding is that it's not a typical thing.
There was one very, very large house that was built on Main Street, and they had to pay to have it opened and fixed in the whole bit.
One other item that was outstanding with the previous plan, I don't know if it had been resolved, was the stormwater. And again, with the level of detail that you have here, we don't know where the stormwater is connecting.
Yeah.
But if it,
Yeah. I don't tell what's going on with stormwater.
so we can't speak to whether or not a right to flow is required.
Right, and seeing how the back of the property is wetlands, I think, stormwater is obviously very critical. It's critical. Successful stormwater management is critical in this property.
Well, it looks like there's 3 or 4 kind of Board of Health waivers requested, so I don't think we need to weigh in on that, because the Board of Health.
And that's for the Title V.
Yeah, but there's stormwater.
The stormwater is.
The stormwater from the front of the site previously was proposed to connect to drains to cross the street and then flow across the aquarium property. And so the question was whether a right to connect or a right to drain was required to connect into the public system for the private development. And that was a matter of the previous plan. We don't have any level of detail here, so it makes it difficult for the board to comment on the adequacy of the stormwater, given the scope of your review and the material that you have.
So you'll be, you draft a memo, we'll take a look at it.
I'll draft a memo and email it to you all for edits.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. All right, we've already dealt with minutes, the only thing to add would be, so on the next meeting, which is next Monday night, obviously, I would ask that we maybe do the site plan review first, right at 7 o'clock, and then under old business, under new business, I think we should start talking about reorganization with as we do every year, near the end of April. We should talk about leadership, leadership changes, and
We usually do it after town meeting.
I was thinking that, but I know obviously we would vote on it, we would just discuss it, see who's interested in it. And you're right, but now obviously, I don't know Walter's going to lose, so we need to see who's interested in what, and so we can move that. So maybe what we do is we just identify who's interested in what position and our different committee assignments, and we can kind of just put it out there, and then we vote on it right after town meeting, right after the election.
One thing I want to bring up, the Ames Chapel, we have continued till Monday, and I think that will be relatively quick. Don't you think that would go far?
Sure, we put that on 7, fine, yeah.
I like it on 7 because I think we're both for
Yeah, that's right, we get them late.
I think they do. I don't know how quick it will be. At least need 15, 20 minutes. Half an hour now.
And Dick's on that too, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and I didn't say he wasn't here tonight, but...
I mean, it should be quick, but I'm not, they did have some engineering issues to resolve.
We did get in revised plans and responses to comments.
Okay.
With regard to old new business, do you want to discuss how you want to proceed through the master plan goals? I know previously you had talked about, would you go section by section, or how would you kind of go through them in a methodical way?
I personally like the suggestion of going section by section. What do you guys think?
I do too. I thought it was a good way to...
I think it was your suggestion, Judy.
Oh, no wonder I liked it.
And do you want to wait till after town meeting to start that?
Yeah. Because we get one meeting next week, and then the 21st is the holiday. Walter's going to run that day.
Holiday and Sarah's birthday.
That's right. And Walter's going to run a marathon in honor of your birthday.
Thank you.
How about Karen and I will put together kind of a proposed schedule, and then the board can
Even if you
decide.
took us through September, because I think the summer is typically slower, so we could probably sneak these in.
We really do need, I think, to go every other week in the summer.
Yeah, I think that's a good proposal. And speaking of the master
And
plan...
I'm also gone a lot of the way.
Which country are you
June, South Africa.
Which month are you going?
June.
I'm going to be gone a lot from mid-May to mid-June.
Well, you know what, we'll put
20-something.
We'll project out a schedule, and then we'll find out if there's blocks when a majority isn't around, we can cluster and shift and maybe do a couple, weeks in a row and then take a break or whatever the board prefers.
And one last comment about master plan is I took a hard look at that Hanover case, and I want to encourage everybody to try to read it, because it basically, in that decision, it speaks to if a town's master plan can adequately lay out a 40B plan, then courts, in addressing 40B issues and 40B reviews, can go with the town's master plan and say, well, the town of X, Y, and Z had proposed 40B developments in this part of town for these reasons. And what I took from that case was that it could really help us in addressing the 40B issue in Hingham. And so I think we should dedicate a full night to that.
Do we have that case somewhere?
We do, and yeah, I think
I can send it again.
It's a really good case. I was very surprised by it, because in the decision, it's called Hanover, like RNS. It's not the town of Hanover. I think Hanover was the applicant of some sort of development. But it actually talks about the case where they have supported, I forget what town it was, they supported one town's denial of 40B because they did really lay out a 40B plan in their master.
An affordable housing plan.
Right, affordable housing plan. And in this case, they denied it because it wasn't properly laid out. But it's something that, since we're in the thick of master plan, I think it would have really behooved the town to put a lot of time into that. And, a whole section maybe devote to that topic, affordable housing.
Yeah,
I think we've talked about it, but
yeah.
I think we should really get in the weeds of it.
I think that it shows that the courts feel that if there was a thoughtful dialogue around 40B, and the conversation wasn't just not anywhere, but it shouldn't be here for these reasons, but these are areas where if it was designed appropriately, it could fit.
Particularly where we have, we have a transportation infrastructure with the train that we didn't have with our last master plan, or I don't think we did.
Yeah.
We have a pretty connected MBTA bus line in Hingham that doesn't really that they're really not addressing our master plan. So there's a lot of different things that we can talk about that I think would help the town in addressing our affordable housing issue on some of these 40Bs that come in.
Hanover has a planned production housing plan.
Yeah,
made up.
I don't think it's a town of Hanover. I think Hanover was the applicant. I think it was like Hanover R&S Company, but I read it on the way to work every day, and I just really...
Do we have our planned production?
We do have it. It was never endorsed by the state. But we do have it, and I can circulate another copy of that
Well, we
as
should
well.
do that as part of the, if we're going to
Discussion.
have affordable housing plan in our master plan, then that should definitely be.
All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Time to go home and watch the national championship game.
Oh, no,
What is it? I like that.